Hey everyone, welcome to another top 10 list. In the past, I have done top 10 lists dedicated to the 100 greatest American currency notes. That's this book right here. I made a complete playlist showing all 100 notes. I did 10 separate top 10 videos itemizing each one, and you can check out that playlist down below. And it is impossible to get all 100 notes. Some of the notes, as I've shown in more recent videos, are just too unique, I guess is the best way to put it. They are too scarce. I filmed over 30 notes from this book that there are less than 100 notes available. Some of them are unique. Some of them were never even issued to the public. So to put together all 100, you can't do it. But notes that are scarce or rare or unique or unattainable because of their scarcity isn't the only problem with the top 100 list. The other problem is some of the notes are available, but their prices are just out of reach of the average collector. So I had to use a price range to determine what would be out of reach. And I figured a lot of people like to buy an ounce of gold as their key collecting feature, so we would use the price of gold to determine what would be out of reach. So I went through the top 100 notes, and I found 20 notes that start off in that $4,000 range and go all the way through millions of dollars. And these notes, even though there are a number of them available, they're simply out of the price range. So that's going to be this week and next week. We're going to do the top 20 notes that are just out of the average collector's price range. If you're doing the math, if there were 30 that are just too rare to add to your collection and another 20 that are just too expensive, that means there are roughly 50 notes that you're going to be able to put in your collection out of the top 100. I'm sitting at 34 of those, so I feel pretty good about that, but I know I got a ways to go in my collection. All right, so let's get on with the top 20 notes that are too expensive to add to the average person's collection. Number 20 on my list is number 94 on the overall top 100. It's the Massachusetts Sword in Hand note. And as you can see, this particular note was in the interesting denomination of 42 shillings. And if you look at the back, you can see why it was called the Sword in Hand note. I'm not going to try to read the Old English. There's some Latin mixed in there, as well as the unusual S's that look like F's. So I'm not going to try to figure out all that stuff on it there. But that is what the note looks like. Now, this particular note was printed by Paul Revere. Paul Revere was a silversmith as well as a printer. There, I want to say, were 14,500 of these initially printed. And to this day, only about 600 to 1,000 of them still exist, which is actually a pretty high number compared to the number printed. So 600 to 1,000 of these out there. This particular note, you're talking a price of about 11 grand if you can stumble across one of these. So yeah, not just pocket change. 11 grand is a lot to put out for one of these. But if you've got the cash, you will be able to come across these, like I said, between 600 and 1,000 of them out there. Number 94 out of the top 100, and number 20 on my list, the Massachusetts Sword in Hand note. Number 19 on the list, and number 89 out of the top 100, this is the $500 Federal Reserve note from 1918. Trying to hold on to this so we don't get too much glare. This is my reproduction note. We take a look at the back. Really cool description on the back. And this particular note, there are between 250 and 300 of these still floating around, but because it's a large size $500 note, you're talking a little bit on the expensive side. It's FR 1132, and even in rough condition, this is going to go for about 5 grand. If you find one of these that's in really good shape, if you find one of these that's graded very well, you're talking over $150,000 on this $500 Federal Reserve note. So the 1918 $500 FRN, number 89 out of the top 100. This one is number 19 on my list. Number 18 on the list is a Second charter period $50 national. This particular $50 national is known as a date back, and as you can see on the back of the note there, it has the dates 1882 to 1908. 1882 was the first year of the second charter period, and the date on the back represents the years that incorporate the second charter period. The $50 bills weren't printed. There weren't a lot of them issued for all. There were, 15,000 national banks, and the $50 denomination was one that just wasn't that popular. And when they printed them, you can see here on the chart, on the pages, there were actually 3 50s for every 100 that were printed. Now, these particular notes are number, where do I have it on here? This is number 87 on the list, number 18 overall. Like I said, you're talking 1882. What you're keying on, though, is the date back version. There's also a value back version. I think the next couple pages show there's where it has the value printed on the back. But we're specifically talking about the date backs. Some of the other charter periods have blank backs, date backs, and value backs, but this specifically is the $50 date back that we're referring to. There are approximately 200 to 230 of these still around, and you're talking a price range of roughly $4,000 to upwards of $20,000 to add one of these to your collection. So that is the $50 date back from the second charter period. Number 18 on my list and number 87 overall out of the top 100. Number 17 on my list is number 79 out of the top 100. This is the special marble-ended paper $20 continental currency note. This one's dated May 10th, 1775. Now, they printed a number of the continental currency notes. Continental currency was backed by the Continental Congress, or I should say it was issued by the Continental Congress to help support the Revolutionary War. But this particular note has this marbleized paper right here. Benjamin Franklin traveled to France. You can see here if I check it out. The paper was obtained in France by Benjamin Franklin, in contrast to the thick paper that they used to use here. So this particular paper with the marbleization, that is the French paper. How much cooler and historical can you get? Benjamin Franklin brought it back from France. Enough said. Okay. These particular notes, there are roughly 300 to 500 of them still around, and you're talking a price somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,000 if you can get your hands on one of these. What a cool addition to your collection. A note not only printed by Benjamin Franklin's printing company, but when you find one with this, he went and got the paper himself. Anyway, number 79 overall in the top 100. This one is number 17 on my list. Number 16. This is the $1,000 gold certificate. This one here is a replica of the 34, but the 1928 would look just like this particular one. 1928 $1,000 gold certificate. These are cool. It was the first issue of small-sized gold certificates. The difference between the 34 and the 28, the 34 was not issued to the general public, and the 34s had this gorgeous back like this. The 28 small-sized note had a standard green back, so the same design here, but with the green ink. The 34 went to the gold ink. The 34s were never issued to the public because in 1933, we went off the gold standard and the federal government said you cannot own gold certificates. So all of the 34s would have had to have been turned in, or all of the gold certificates would have had to have been turned in. Since this was printed in 1934, this was literally bank-to-bank transactions. Anyway, this particular note, if it was the 1928, there's between 150 and 300 of these floating around, and you are talking FR number 2408. If you are lucky enough to come across one of these, even in rough condition, you're looking at about $6,000. If it's in good condition, you could be upwards of $160,000. So, like I said, number 76 on the list. And number 16 on my list, the 1924 $1,000 gold certificate. Number 74 of the top 100, and this is number 15 on my list. This would be the $1,000 gold certificate from 1907. This is the large size version of the gold certificate. The note previous to this is what replaced it. 1907 gold certificate, of course, being a large size note. There's about 175 to 225 of these still around. This one would have the gold back like you see here. So a very cool addition. As hard as these are to come by, I do know one person with one, so they can be acquired. But your average person most likely is not going to be able to get a hold of one of these. In rough shape, these are still valued at over $10,000. If you find one in really good shape, it can sell at auction for upwards of $265,000 was the highest auction price I saw recently. So 10 grand to 265 grand. This particular one is FR 1219, and it's number 15 on my list, number 74 out of the top 100. Continuing with the theme of $1,000 bills. These three notes are 1, 2, 3 in the book. They're number 76, number 75, and number 74. This particular one is number 74, the $1,000 large size Federal Reserve note from 1918. This one's number 14 on my list. This particular Federal Reserve note, there's between 200 and 300 of them still floating around. There is the back. Very cool picture of the eagle. I wish when they start reusing stuff with notes, I wish that they would have used this a little bit more. Another thing that's fascinating about this is this also has the dollar sign behind the numbers. The dollar sign, I can only think of one other instance where the dollar sign actually appears on paper money, and that would be on the $1 silver certificate. So yeah, here's another example where you actually see a dollar sign. But think about that. Most notes don't have a dollar sign. And if you're looking for one, that just makes that educational series that much more appealing because there is a dollar sign on the $1. Anyway, this particular note, like I said, is number 14 on my list, number 74 overall. There's between 200 and 300 of these still floating around. It is FR 1133. In rough shape, you're talking 10 grand, and in decent shape, this could be upwards of $150,000 for this particular note. So that one is number 74 on the big list and number 14 on my list. Number 13 is a $50 bill. This one is from the, which one is this? This one is from 1882, and it is a national, the $50 national, the $50 brownback specifically. Called the brownback, obviously, because of the brown ink that's used on the back. These were always interesting because on one side you had the eagle for the United States, and on the other side you had the picture for whatever particular state or territory that the national came from. This replica, you can see, is from the state of Kansas. So on the back, it lists from Kansas. It shows the image that represented Kansas. Anyway, the $50 brownback, this one is number 13 on my list, and out of the top 100, this is number 72. There are between 425 and 550 of these that still survive. This one is FR 507. In rough shape, you can find these for around 4 or 5 grand. If you want one in decent shape, it could run you $27,000 without a problem. So that is number 72 overall and number 13 on my list, the $50 brownback. Number 12 on the list. This is from, where do I got it on here? This is an 1863 compound interest Treasury note. The compound interest Treasury notes were interesting because on the back they would list how much interest you were getting from the time you bought it till the time you redeemed it. It was also interesting because this was spendable, so whenever you got it, you could spend it technically for whatever the interest was on the back as well, and then whenever someone turned it in, that's the price that they would get. These particular compound interest notes were interesting also in the fact that they used the bronzing powder for this, where it says compound interest treasury note, the 10, that was actually printed in glue, and then they would sprinkle the bronzing powder over it to make it hard to counterfeit these notes. That's 7P Chase over there. So yeah, this is just glued on, essentially. They put the glue on there. They printed the glue like you would print ink and then sprinkle the powder on. Very messy process, so there weren't a whole lot of these that were out there. And you have to also be impressed by all the detail on the back of this particular note. Now, when we get into the specs on this note, we are talking between 160 and 200 of these still exist. And we've got FR 190. Even in rough shape, these are going to go for well over $3,000. If you find one that's nice, you're talking $85,000 to add this to your collection. So that is number 68 overall out of the top 100 and number 12 on my top 20 list. And finally this week we have number 11. This is the $10 silver certificate from the series of 1778 and 1878 and 1880. This particular silver certificate, I want to say these were the black backs because they use black ink on the back, which is kind of rare. Anyway, this one, as you can see, is the first series of silver certificates. It starts with FR 283, and there's approximately 450 to 550 of these still floating around. These particular notes, just checking my notes, number 63 overall, number 11 on my list from 1878 or 1880, 450 to 550 available, FR 283, and as far as prices go, we're starting around $3,000 on these, but realistically, if you find one in decent shape, you're talking much closer to $60,000. So that rounds out number 11 on my list. Stay tuned next week for when I do the top 10 notes that are probably out of reach for most collectors out of the top 100. Guys, thanks very much for watching. If you like what you see and you want to see more, please subscribe, and I will talk to you later.